Here are your vocabulary words for the first week for the novel Catcher in the Rye. As you listen to the video, make sure you are writing down each word, the part of speech the word belongs to, as well as the definitions. If it helps you, feel free to write down the sentences that are included for the words as well. You do not have to, but please note that you may not repeat any of these sentences for future homework assignments. So the first word for this week is ostracized, and ostracized is a verb, and it means to exclude by general consent from society, friendship, conversation, privileges, etc. And this word appears early in the novel, and it is used when Holden is returning with his fencing team, and he describes being ostracized by his teammates. And the example here is of a lemur, and it says, like all social animals, ring-tailed lemurs will ostracize a member of their group if the animal becomes a burden. A lonesome lemur usually does not fare well. So to ostracize someone is a very extreme act. A lot of times when they are excluded, they are not welcomed back. So to ostracize someone is beyond just not welcoming them or to have a fight with them. So ostracizing someone is a very extreme act. So for that word to be used by Holden early in the book is telling of his character, and it gives a hint to the reader of what type of person Holden is and how he views others and his interactions with others. Innumerable, and innumerable is an adjective, and it means very numerous, and most of the time you will see it being used to describe an uncountable amount. So this is a picture of a beach, and if you go to the beach and you sit in the sand, there are lots of grains of sand that make up the beach. And if you go to the beach, you could spend your day counting every single grain of sand, but that's not really a fun way to spend your day at the beach. So hopefully you can find something better to do if you go to a beach. So instead of counting every grain of sand, you would say, this beach consists of innumerable grains of sand. There's so many grains of sand that make up a beach that it is an uncountable amount. So there's lots of different examples of that. And this is a word that's used a little bit later in the book by Holden when he is describing the Egyptian mummifying process and how they are wanting these mummies to last an innumerable amount of years. So it's saying that Holden wants these creatures, these people to be preserved basically forever if it's a time that cannot be counted. Qualms. Qualms is a noun, and it means an uneasy feeling or pain of conscience as to conduct. So when we think about using the word qualms, it's normally associated with us feeling guilty or regret or upset, uneasy about a situation. And this example says, Katy Perry had no qualms about kissing Russell Brand and liking it. So in essence, she does not feel any regret about her actions. She is just fine with what she did. So in this book, it's used to describe Holden. Holden's asked if he has any qualms about his behaviors that have led to where he is at. So does he have any regrets? And that's where I'm going to leave it. Liable, it's an adjective, and if you are liable, you are legally responsible. So a lot of times on notices, if you read the notices, it will say something like, do this at your own risk, We are not liable. So this one is obviously outside the skate park. Skate at your own risk. We are not liable for accidents or injuries. If you swim at a pool and there's no lifeguard, a lot of times it will say no lifeguard on duty. We are not liable for accidents or injuries. So it's the reason they have that is so that if you were to get hurt, the skate park in this instant or the swimming pool cannot get in trouble. So you cannot then go sue them because they have that sign saying that we are not legally responsible. You saw the sign, you are responsible for your own actions. Most of you are driving or getting your license in the near future. Every time you get behind the vehicle, you are liable. So you are legally responsible when you are driving. So whatever happens in that car, you are liable. Crude. Crude can have two different meanings. So crude is an adjective, and the first meaning is very basic. So that's the meaning, is very basic. And the second meaning is rude in a way that makes people uncomfortable. And in the book, crude is used in that second way. It's used by Holden, and he explains that someone's behavior is crude. So he's describing the actions of somebody in a church, and he's saying that their behavior is crude. So it's rude and offensive. So he's using it more in that second way as opposed to being very basic. So I gave you an example of each. Jason sketched a crude flower for art, which resulted in a lower grade. So there's Jason's lovely sketch, and it's very basic. So if you're in an art class, hopefully you're not turning that in for a grade. That's very basic. Your art teacher would want something much more skilled than that. The second example in pink goes more along the lines of what we will be reading in Catcher in the Rye. The girls overheard a crude conversation at the food court, which caused them to finish their lunch early. So they were uncomfortable. The conversation was not going the way that you would anticipate a public conversation to go. So they got up and they left. Yes, you will need to know both because you don't know which form will appear on your quiz. So make sure you know both. Compulsory, and this is your final one for the week. Compulsory is an adjective, and compulsory means required by law. It also means obligatory, and in this country there are many things that are compulsory, and one would be your education. And depending on the state you live in, your compulsory education ranges between the age of 16 and 18 years old. Living in the state of Kansas, you have a compulsory education age of 18 years old. If you lived in Alabama, your compulsory education age would be 16 years old. So it just changes depending on which state you live in this country. This is a map, and if you read it, it says the school leaving age, and it's a map of the world, so it has data from, looks like, age of 10 up through 18. So that different compulsory education ages all over the world. In the book, early on, Holden talks about attending a compulsory study hall. So it is a mandatory study hall. Now, again, this is revealing about Holden as a character, as a person. Compulsory, is it required by law? No. But is that revealing as to Holden as a character? Yes. For him to choose the word compulsory as opposed to mandatory, that tells you a little bit more about him and how he views school, how he views his situation, how he views the environment in which he's in. So the word choice here besides just being vocabulary you need to know, these vocabulary words reveal a lot about him as a character. So it's important for you to understand these words so we can be having these discussions about who Holden is, and we can start getting into the novel and be having these important discussions. So for your first week, you need to make sure you have these 6 words written down. You should know what parts of speech each one of these words are, as well as a definition. If you don't have one of those written down, make sure you go back, pause the video, get it written down, because you will get a grade for it. So make sure you bring this with you to class, and we will be going over, discussing, and then applying these words into some various activities. So make sure you have this. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Awesome job, and I will see you in class tomorrow. Adios.